The debate about whether Lando Norris was right to attack Max Verstappen at the start of the Miami Grand Prix, whether he should have waited, whether Max Verstappen was right to push him off the road, whether he did push him off the road. A lot of questions are surrounding this incident at the start of the Grand Prix on Sunday, and I kind of wanted to go through what all sides are thinking in terms of McLaren's Lando Norris, Max Verstappen from Red Bull, and also the team principal Andrea Stella. I've got all the quotes here on this article on the F1Chronicle.com. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to give my take on it at the end of the video, because it is a very controversial incident in the sense that it's very hard to form a complete opinion about what was right to do. And I think no matter what, it was kind of a very difficult situation for Lando Norris at the end of the day, and I'll explain why as we go through this. But let's dive into this article here, guys, on the F1Chronicle.com as always. McLaren's Lando Norris has criticised Max Verstappen's approach to racing at the Miami Grand Prix, suggesting that the four-time world champion's aggressive defence against both McLaren drivers may have cost him a podium finish. Norris, who lost 4 positions on the first lap after ending up off the track when attempting to pass Verstappen and race winner Oscar Piastri, both engaged in intense multi-lap battles with the Dutchman throughout the race. He's fighting hard, but it's up to him to do that. He's ruining his own race. He's not racing very smart. He probably could have finished third today, and he didn't because of that. So yeah, he's fighting. That is always expected. But that's what it is. Verstappen, who ultimately finished 4th behind Mercedes driver George Russell, dismissed the notion that losing the podium was frustrating. Honestly, it's not frustrating at all to lose a podium. We are here to win today, and we were miles off that, so it doesn't really matter if you're P3 or P4, he said. I had nothing to lose, so I also just wanted to have a bit of fun out there. Norris's own race was significantly impacted by his first lap incident with Verstappen after challenging the Red Bull on the outside of the first corner and attempting to pass around the outside of the second corner when Verstappen ran slightly deep. Norris was forced off the track and into the runoff area, slipping down to 6th place. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella suggested that Norris could have been more patient with his approach. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella suggested that Norris could have been more patient in his approach. With the benefit of hindsight, let's say that considering the situation in corner 1-2, it could have been better for Lando to just lift off and make sure that he could have kept the second position, because the car, again, with the benefit of hindsight, we see that was very fast and he would certainly have passed Max like Oscar, and then later Lando was in condition to do so, Stella said. Indeed, McLaren actually finished around 30 seconds ahead of George Russell, who finished in 3rd place. It was an extremely dominant victory for them. The biggest 1-2 margin of victory in years. I can't remember when they said it was in the commentary, but a long time. I think since like the start of 23. I think Red Bull might have managed it with Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez at some point, but even then, this was arguably even more dominant than that. So I think, like every situation in racing, you have to approach it with the mindset of reviewing where the opportunities lie, and I think in this case, Lando could have been a little bit more patient. Norris was further delayed in his battle with Verstappen when he passed the Red Bull at turn 11 by going off track and had to give the position back before ultimately regaining it in the following lap. Despite closing in on teammate Piastri in the second stint, Norris ran out of time to challenge for the lead. Stella, however, saw no problem in the approach taken by his driver when racing against Verstappen. Both drivers were approaching the overtaking in a way that had Lando not gone off by a few centimetres in corner 11, he would have completed the overtaking in what was a similar time. So I don't think we should overread too much into situations. I think it's, like I said before, it's a matter sometimes of a fraction of a second or a fraction of a metre, he said. The big time loss came down to having to give back the position, so I think in terms of overtaking manoeuvres and precision and determination, I don't see there's anything different between the two drivers. Right, so there's a lot to unpack there. So the first question that a lot of people will ask is, was Verstappen right to defend as vociferously, as passionately, as harshly, some people might say, as he did, you know, getting the elbows out? And I think he was absolutely right to do that. There's no problem with him doing that in terms of the rules. Now, whether it was the best thing for his race to do that, that is very debatable. Now, I've seen a few people say that he should have took a more holistic look at things and been like, look, you know, the McLarens are clearly faster. I might as well not fight them too much, because my real battle here is with George Russell, with Kimi Antonelli, with the Ferraris behind. And I understand that viewpoint, but at that time, it looked as though it could have rained. And if it rained, particularly with McLaren being up there with both drivers, and would have had to potentially double stack their cars, losing time in the pits as a result. And we know how good Verstappen is in the wet as well. You know, he wasn't far off winning the Grand Prix in Australia when it was wet. So if it rained, and we obviously had experience of it raining as well early in the week with the sprint race, Verstappen could have come to his own. Yes, he was slower in dry conditions, but in the wet, would he have been faster? Would he have been better? Possibly, given his form in previous wet races. Probably, I would say. So I understand why he did that. It's easy to say in hindsight, well, it never rained, but there was a genuine threat of rain. And indeed, it did rain a little bit. We did see some droplets on the camera, so it was very close to raining during the race. That storm, that rain pattern that was on the radar, that only just passed the circuit by the tiniest little margin. If that hit, we're talking about a completely different Grand Prix here. Now, when it comes to Verstappen, some people will say he pushed off Lando Norris on purpose in the first few corners. Some people would say that, you know, he was just fair racing. For me, it was borderline. But it's always going to be borderline with Max. You know, he pushes things to the absolute maximum, as he has the right to do. You know, any good Formula One driver worth their salt will try to overtake or try and keep their position. That is what they do. And I think in the benefit of hindsight, like Stella said, I think, to be honest, I think Norris should have probably backed out. Now, some people again argue that, well, the gap was there and he should have gone for it. And I sort of agree to an extent with that. But I also think, you know, it's a classic notion of you can lose the race in the first corner, but you can't win it. And you could argue that he could have won it if he got past, but was he ever getting past there? Around the outside through turn 1 and 2, no, I don't think he was really. It's not an easy place to pass. You have to have the overtaking manoeuvre done pretty much into the corner. He had a right to go for it, you know, in the sense of it being legal, and there's nothing wrong with it, but in the sense of, again, looking at his race on a whole, thinking, well, Verstappen, and again, they might have known that they were that quick. They might have not known. I think they probably knew they were very quick. You know, I mean, we didn't have, you know, dry conditions for the entire race on Saturday. Indeed, we only got about 1 or 2 laps of green flag running in the dry weather tyres, I should say, at the end of the race before the safety car was thrown and then it finished in the safety car. So, yeah, the data might not have been there for that, but I think they should have known they were very quick. But then again, maybe they didn't. You know, they didn't get pole position. Max Verstappen did. So it's a tough one. I have to say that I don't have a big problem with Norris taking as long as he did to get past. Because like Stella rightfully says, you know, unfortunately, him getting past Verstappen was not the real problem. It was the fact that he was behind him in the first place and behind his teammate. That's what ultimately cost him the race. You know, Piastri, for me, was backing off in the closing stages. Norris closed that 9-second gap down to about 3 by the end, but I think he was doing a classic Alain Prost. I mean, I've likened Piastri to Prost quite a few times, and I think that really, this race in Miami, again, it rubber stamped it for me. I think he really did look like Prost. He won the race, not by the smallest possible margin, but he won the race by a smaller margin than what he could have done. He could have gone hell for leather. He could have just gone absolutely unleashed the pace of that McLaren and just not look back. But he didn't. He did that earlier, built a gap. And when Lando Norris got past Verstappen, he just matched his lap times. In the closing stages, took it easy. Easier on the engine. But let's not forget, it's not just about this Grand Prix. It's about all the races for the rest of the season. They've only got 3-4 different power unit components, depending on what they are for the whole season. So managing that is key to a championship challenge. If he loses a few seconds in Miami but still wins, he could well gain extra engine life, extra engine power. Places like Monza, places where there's a lot of high speed, you know, Baku, places like that, Las Vegas towards the back end of the campaign. This could all prove really, really crucial for Piastri. And while he's doing this, he's picking up little points. He's picking, not talking about championship points, we're talking about confidence points. I'm talking about his, the points on his car effectively, you know, he's getting better life, more durability in his components. It just all feeds into it, and all at the same time. That's 3 victories in a row for Oscar Piastri. So for me, yes, I can see why the incident was investigated with Verstappen and Norris. Absolutely, look into it. But for me, no problem. It's hard, but it's fair. If you're Lando Norris, again, look at the onboards. If you look at Lando Norris's onboard, it looks dodgy. I will admit, it doesn't look great. But look at it from Max Verstappen's POV. Look at his camera. He gets a bit of oversteer, a little twitch of oversteer on throttle, and that's kind of what pushes Lando Norris off more than anything. I don't think he did it deliberately, but even if he did try and push him off, he had the right to at that point. He was the lead driver. He had the corner. He dictates the line. That's the difference between Miami and Saudi Arabia. Oscar Piastri in Saudi Arabia was the lead driver, and then Verstappen passed him off the track. This is a completely different incident. That is why Verstappen correctly got a penalty for that in Jeddah. And this is also the opposite reason. This is also why Verstappen did not get a penalty for this in Miami, which I also believe is correct. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. Should Verstappen have got a penalty? Was he smart by defending as well as he did against McLaren's? He was unlucky. The reason why he got passed was not purely because he was defending from the McLarens. It was also because there was a VSC and George Russell passed him under the virtual safety car when, of course, the pit lane lost time is less than in green flag running. So he was a little unlucky too. But if he didn't defend so elbows out against the McLarens, he probably would have finished third, I think. But you don't know these things. It's if, buts and maybes. You are preparing for a situation that may never arise. And I've just spent 12 minutes talking about this. You know, I love Formula 1, and I hope that explains it for you guys. You know, this is the kind of mental... And then, by the way, it took me 12 minutes to explain this. These guys should be making these mental calculations in, you know, seconds, or they are making them in seconds. That's the kind of brain power that they have to be able to drive these cars absolutely full throttle and do these mental gymnastics at the same time. And it's hard to take a whole kind of thing of a perspective of the race at that point. That's why they got teams of people. You know, they got hundreds of dudes back in the UK or wherever they have team bases calculating things. That's why they have these big teams, because there's so much going on in Formula 1 and a lot of it you don't see. So yeah, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more like this, and have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world today.